Once upon a time, you and me and us lived from the land, in rhythm with the earth. We woke when the sun rose, and we slept when the sun set. We ate what we could find or hunt or grow. We cooked together and danced and sang. We banged drums and held festivals, and we celebrated the harvest. And like the trees and the animals, we were part of the rhythm of the earth and the stars and their constant movement. Every one of us was a tiny seed in the journey of life. And every one of us had a part to play in its magical unfolding. Skip forward to 1771. Our story continues in the small village of Cromford, England. Most of us were still working in the fields, tilling the soil and celebrating the harvest, when Richard Arkwright opened the first factory to spin cotton into thread. One by one, you and me and us left our fields and our festivals and the rhythm of the earth and the stars and their constant movement, and we went to work in that factory. 20 years later, that first factory had turned into 200 factories. Those first threads had turned into the massive global cotton industry. And that first investment had opened up a whole new world of limited liability. The Industrial Revolution had arrived. Most of us were sitting with the rhythm of the earth and the stars and their constant movement. We still had that memory, but it was starting to fade. And then something awful happened. It was World War I. War changed everything. The factories started making weapons in mass quantities. Men enlisted, food was rationed, and the governments created loads of posters and flyers to tell us what to do, and we did what we were told. Many of us never recovered from that war. And then there was a depression, and then there was another war, and again, the government created more posters and flyers to tell us what to do. We planted gardens and collected metal. We turned our lights out at night. We even ate liver. We did what we were told, and we were glad to help. In the end, almost 100 million people died during those two world wars in one way or another, and combined with the depression in the middle, those events changed you and me and us dramatically. Our memory of the rhythm of the earth and the stars and their constant movement had been replaced by our memory of the dead. Thankfully, the war ended, and we all came home. You and me and us in those factories now needed something to do. The factories started producing all kinds of things, from cigarettes to soap and chocolate to cars. The problem was that after 2 world wars and a depression, we weren't buying very much. But there was a lot to buy, and those factories needed to sell. And then something very strange happened. Someone, it was actually Dr. Sigmund Freud's nephew, came up with a brilliant idea. We could invent needs for all these products that we had mass-produced. And then, like during the war, we could create loads of posters and flyers so that people could see that they now had these needs. And then people could go and buy the mass-produced products in order to fulfill the needs they now thought they had. Now, this may seem like a harebrained scheme to you, but it worked. We bought Chesterfield cigarettes because they made us feel like men. Listen to this. We bought Coca-Cola because it was wholesome and nutritious. And we bought Elvis Presley lipstick so we could keep him close to us on our lips. The TV arrived, and that, of course, made this whole process 10 times easier. Fashion icons and brands and popular culture were the absolute buzzwords of the day. Modern marketing and mass production had become the best of friends, and life was good. Money had become the basis of life, and purchasing power had become its defining feature. You and me and us split into a million pieces. We started competing with each other to get into the right schools, so we could get into the right universities, so we could get the right jobs, so we could make money, so we could buy things, so that everyone would know who we were. We got so busy and worked so hard at this that we didn't have time for anything else. We were so caught up in that crazy game, and it was addictive. But what really happened when money took over life was that some of us had a head start. And we built a system that ensured that if you had some money, you could get some more, at least at the beginning. Over time, things got more and more difficult. In fact, the money-making game got so complicated that actually people didn't really know how it worked anymore. And then money-making went global. Now the you and me and us that were making loads of money could make it internationally. The world economy had become a completely out-of-control monopoly game. And none of us knew how to fix it. By 2012, the result of all this money-making was as follows. 8% of us were making 80% of the assets and controlled almost half of the total income. The rest of us were working harder and harder every day and making less and less. Because money wasn't trickling down, it was trickling up instead. And after all that wealth creation, 40% of us did not have a toilet. 60% of us were either under or totally unemployed. And 80% of us were making less than $10 per day. And then, out of the blue, and just as some of the 80% of us reached for the Monopoly board, hoping to have a go, some of the 20% of us making more than $10 a day began to figure it out. We began to see the game and what had happened to life and you and me and us. Some of us sensed something was wrong, but we just ignored it. And some of us joined the movement and started marching and protesting, and some of us got completely lost on the internet looking for ideas and answers. But some of us stopped. We stopped rushing around, we stopped competing, and we definitely stopped buying things we didn't need. In fact, we stopped playing as much of the game as we could, and we waited to see what would happen. a massive weight lifted from our shoulders. And life became lighter. We had time to do things we hadn't done for ages, like cooking real food and making things, spending time in nature. And as we continued through this brave new world, feeling our way, something really extraordinary began to happen. The seeds of our true selves, hidden deep inside us, began to grow. Projects, experiments, artistic efforts, and new ideas began sprouting up in the most unlikely of places. And as they did, more and more positive energy was being released every day. We were not competing anymore. We were connecting and contributing and collaborating. Because you and me and us, we are multidimensional beings. And exactly like the energy released when we learned how to split the atom, we too were full of abundance, 100,000 times more powerful than you can possibly imagine. And one by one, as we created the time and space to allow this energy to come through, one by one, we began to create a future where every single one of us, being who we are and doing what we love, could have the opportunity to take our place in the great web of life. Once upon a time, you and me and us lived with respect for the land. We cooked together and danced and sang. We played music and held festivals and celebrated the harvest. And like the trees and the animals, we were part of the rhythm of the earth and the stars and their constant movement. Every single one of us was a tiny seed in the journey of life. And every single one of us had a part to play in its magical unfolding. Thank you.